Is 3 unprotected picks in 2025, 2027, and 2029 from the Cavs more valuable than 2 unprotected Knicks picks, given what we know about like the Knicks roster right now, their just overall organizational, the James Dolan of it all, let's call it. Like, I think the Knicks actually have done like a really competent job with their front office.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean this as a slight at like Leon Rose. I don't mean this as a slight at the players on the roster. Like, I think that the front office, since they've taken over, has actually done like a pretty good job. I just wonder, like, that organization is perpetually unstable under James Dolan. Like, it's just the reality of the situation. I'm sorry. I feel bad saying it. It just, I just wonder if 2 unprotected Knicks picks might be more valuable than 3 unprotected Cavs picks as the Cavs move into this Evan Mobley led era where they also have Darius Garland, who's an all-star, and now also have Donovan Mitchell and the potential to re-sign Donovan Mitchell moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, look, part of this too is not just the 3 Cavs picks versus 2 from the Knicks. It's the Colin Sexton versus whatever salary pieces you would get for the Knicks, assuming that might be an RJ Barrett. I know the extension kind of threw a little bit of a wrench in some of those negotiations, potentially. But I don't know where I'd stand on 3 Cleveland picks versus 2 New York. I think that's pretty close. But I do know I would much rather have a guy like RJ Barrett than any current asset that the Cavaliers could have thrown at me if I'm Utah.
Yeah. I get that. I don't know. I'm in on RJ. Like, that's the thing. Like, and we'll talk about RJ at the end, but like, and I want to talk about his extension at the end, but like, I just, this is a weird deal for Utah where it's just like, if Donovan Mitchell stays in Cleveland, like, this is not a good deal for the Jazz. I don't think. Like, I think they would have done better doing the Knicks deal. But like, it's always what Danny Ainge was going to do. Whoever gave him the most unprotected picks, he was going to do that deal. That's what his style is. That's what his mentality is on this thing. And I get it. I just worry about what like, Evan Mobley's really good. That's kind of what I keep coming back to. Like, if you're Utah, you're betting on a team with Evan Mobley and like now 3 all-stars surrounding Evan Mobley, all of whom are 25 and under. I think Jared Allen is 25 still. He might be 26, I guess. You're betting on that team failing. And Evan Mobley still has like 8 years left of team control because I'm sure he's going to sign a 5-year max, right? Like, that would make sense. I get it. I get why he did this. Also, there might just be a part of it where like the Knicks were fucking around and he got sick of dealing with the Knicks, right? Like, and this is like not a like tangibly worse deal. I don't know if it was, so like the final deal that Shams reported over on TV earlier today was RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, 2 unprotected firsts. And like, you would assume that Evan Fournier was in that deal somehow. Look, I can't imagine that if it came down to it, like, look, this was not reported. This is now me speculating. I can't imagine if it came down to it, the Knicks would be like, no, Obi Toppin is our breaking point. Like, I would bet that they probably could have gotten Obi Toppin in that deal, given the way that they've utilized Obi so far. It has nothing to do with like how good Obi Toppin is. It has to do with the fact that like up until the last 10 games of last season, they've misutilized him since they acquired him. So like, you can get all of that, or you can do the Cavs deal where you get Colin Sexton, who's pretty good. Like, I think Colin Sexton's going to put up numbers in Utah. Like, Colin Sexton is going to put up 25 points a game, probably on like league average efficiency, because that's what he does. That's who Colin Sexton is. Lauri Markkanen is a valuable player. Like, he's a starting power forward in today's NBA because of his ability to space the floor. Ochai Agbaji is like a good flyer, good wing defender, good 3-and-D guy. I don't see him as anything more than somewhere between like a 5th and 8th man on a roster. Like, it's like getting to me, like, I like him a little bit less than I like Quentin Grimes, for instance, as an asset. And it seems like the Knicks like weren't necessarily offering Quentin. I don't know. Like, I like, I like the overall haul that Utah got for Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. I just wonder if I would have rather bet on the organizational instability of the Knicks over this Cavs roster with Evan Mobley.
Yep, and I certainly understand that. I think with RJ Barrett, and this is something that I'm just speculating and thinking on right here. If you're Utah, do you think that acquiring him either just with his timeline of when he's going to start aging and being a really good player puts him out of the ability to be part of that rebuilt core, and therefore, hey, I'd rather take an extra pick, some other young assets, and a guy like Agbaji and salary filler from a guy like Colin Sexton long term, as opposed to RJ, who we've got to pay for a while. We may win a few more games than we'd like the next couple of years. And then by the time we've rebuilt this thing, he's 27, 28. Not sure if the timelines sync up. Like, I don't know if they're thinking that far in advance or if that enters their mind at all. I think RJ is clearly the superior player. I agree with you. I would have preferred that Knicks package to the Cleveland one. It's close. I think I'd prefer the Knicks one. But I don't know if RJ's contract and timeline situation of being the best player for right now matches up with a complete overhaul and rebuild.
But it doesn't really with Sexton or Lowry either, though, right?
No, but I don't think you acquire them to be those linchpin pieces, right? You acquire them to help bridge the gap over the next few years, and you're taking the extra pick, a guy like Agbaji getting thrown in as a younger guy that is team controlled for 4 years.
Yeah, no, you're right. I get that. But I think RJ is going to be a little bit more flippable. I think that RJ is going to you could move RJ in the future in a way that look, we kind of just saw how valuable Colin Sexton is around the league this summer, right? He was a free agent. I don't think the Cavs were if he would have signed an offer sheet somewhere, I don't know if Cleveland would have matched. Put it that way. They might have just been let's roll over the asset, but I'm not sure that they would have. I don't know. I think I would have rather had the Knicks deal if I was Utah, but nonetheless, they are now set to rebuild moving forward. They have Walker Kessler, they have Ochai Agbaji, they have Talen Horton-Tucker, who's an interesting piece now, although I'm a little bit less interested in Talen Horton-Tucker than I was a week ago because you've acquired Colin Sexton, who's going to dominate the ball. Now the question comes for Utah. Where are you shipping all of these other guys? Okay. The Knicks now. Let's do this Knicks thing. So for as much as I just said that I think the Knicks should, I think the Knicks offer was a little bit better. And I think that it was. I think the Knicks offer was slightly better than the Cavs offer as reported by Shams, largely because I don't trust in James Dolan, right? That's what it comes down to. Not because of the Leon Rose of it all, not because of everything else, but simply because the James Dolan of it all, our guy's going to want to go play for him, everything like that. Was acquiring Donovan Mitchell the right move for them at the end of the day? That's kind of what it comes down to for me. I don't know that it was. I've always been a little bit more hesitant on them giving up all of the assets necessary for Mitchell. It's not when it was 6 firsts and 4 of those firsts were not unprotected, and it was Quentin Grimes and Fournier and quickly, I was okay, sure, whatever, makes sense. If it was going to be 3 unprotected firsts and RJ and everything like that, I don't know, man. The fit between Brunson and Mitchell without the defensive insulation of Allen and Mobley that Cleveland has, that could have turned out really, really poorly, I think, for the Knicks.
Yeah, totally agree there. My complaint with the difference in New York is literally the front court that New York has. That Julius Randle, the inconsistency there is always going to be an issue. I don't think he's the most self-aware offensive player, nor the ideal 4-man defensively to play next to a smaller, lacking a little bit foot speed backcourt. I'm not a huge Mitchell Robinson guy. Like there's a lot of barely above average guys there in New York for the role that you would have them placed in, that mortgaging your future in such a way by giving up that many picks without moving them into a clear top 4 or 5 spot in the East, it puts you in that no man's land that you really want to avoid being in. And it's hard to resist the urge to go out there and get a star player when you're the New York Knicks and you say, we're in New York, we should be good. We haven't been really competitive in a long while. A year ago, we made the playoffs as a 4 seed. We had a little bit of a setback this year, but we should be aspiring to be on that level. It's hard to have the self-awareness sometimes to step back and say, if we do this deal, we're not a top 3 or 4 team in the East right away, and we're mortgaging our future so much to do it that we're losing a lot of our means to improve.
I think that's right. With Donovan Mitchell, what are the Knicks? The Knicks are like, here's a good question. With Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett. Let's say they were able to keep Barrett, although it seems like they offered Barrett based off of what Shams is reporting. So let's even say Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, everything like that. Let's remove Barrett from the equation because it seems like the Knicks offered him. Is that team worse? Is that team better than the Cavs with just like the core that they had previously? Like, is that team better than Darius Garland, Evan Mobley taking a leap, Jared Allen, Lauri Markkanen, etc.?
Yeah, no, from me, just simply on the defensive end of the floor. I trust the defensive infrastructure that the Cavaliers have, and I don't think the Knicks can provide that. Like, even if you throw RJ in the trade and it ends up being Brunson and Mitchell and Randall and a couple of the decent young players that they have to fill in the gaps, I don't think that's a better team than Atlanta with young DeJounte Murray and some, John Collins and some intriguing front court depth there.
DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, Yep.
I don't think that's a better team than Atlanta. And I think the timelines with Cleveland and Atlanta continuing to get better. You can get leapfrogged in 3 years by an Orlando or a Detroit as they have really accumulated those young assets. Maybe Indiana enters that scheme. Like, it's 3 years down the line. I don't see the Knicks, if they make that type of trade, being a top 4 or 5 team in the East. And if you don't see that, I don't think you can justify pulling the trigger. Whereas I can easily see that for Cleveland. It's the theme of what we've been talking about here today, Sam. It's the Mobley impact on all of this.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like you brought up the idea earlier, just getting the star, right? And in New York's case, like, there's a real tangible benefit to getting the star, right? Like, if you get Donovan Mitchell, it could attract other guys to want to play with Donovan Mitchell. Like, you have Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson plays great with superstars. We just saw it, like, in the conference finals, right? I always thought of Donovan Mitchell as like the number 2 piece, so the Knicks could maybe go out and get the number 1. The problem is it's just really fucking hard to go find number 1. Like, it's just really hard. And it makes it a lot more difficult whenever you're like capped out because you're paying Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell. I guess that would be almost $60 million. And look, we can talk about the cap rising as much as we do, and it's an important factor here moving forward. But, you would then have Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Julius Randle signed for like $85 million between the 3 of them. If you were able to keep RJ, you're looking at like 110 then. Like, the cap, maybe it spikes to like 135, then like 150, I guess. But like, once you start talking about maxes at 150 for like superstar number 1 assets, you're talking about like a $50 million max to start. And then it escalates from there. I don't know, man. Like, did the Knicks like get away? Did the Knicks like kind of dodge a bullet with this? Like, they really might have, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I think to me, it's going to depend on 2 things to know if they dodged a bullet. One is, are they going...
I want to be clear too, by the way, this has nothing to do with like me not liking Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. I love Donovan Mitchell as a player. I think he's really, really, like, I think that like some of the hate he gets, like in terms of inefficiency, Some of it was just he was so responsible for creating so much in Utah. Once, especially this year, Mike Conley kind of didn't quite have it as much as he used to. He was just responsible for creating everything in Utah. And while he did it on a floor surrounded by incredible floor spacing, he was just kind of stuck, being forced to do everything for them. And that makes it hard, I think. And plus, like, I don't know how great the synergy was between he and Rudy Gobert on the court. I have no idea about like their personal relationship. I don't really care. But their synergy together on the court has always been like a little bit off, it feels like. So I think in Cleveland, he's going to be great. Like he'll have a great lob partner, and, Jared Allen, he's a great partner in crime, and Darius Garland, like it should be a little bit easier for him, I think. But I think he is a situationally dependent player. He's not so overwhelmingly good. Like he's a top 20 to 25 player in the NBA. He's not a top 10 player in the NBA where like he is going to dominate regardless of what the situation around him is. In New York, the situation around him was not perfect for him to shine. Whereas in Cleveland, I think it's like actually really good for him to like continue to shine and continue to get better.
Yeah, if he was capable of being the number one option, putting a team on his back and winning postseason series, you'd think we would have seen it already at this point. So putting him in that exact same type of role in New York doesn't inspire confidence to me that the Knicks really become a postseason type of team. And I think Cleveland has a little bit more balance offensively. We keep mentioning the defensive infrastructure to really be able to do that. I don't know if I'd say this is the Knicks dodging a bullet, but I would say it will depend on the continued growth of a guy like RJ Barrett, that he has to really continue to get better year after year. And if he ends up being an all-star type of player, then you are no worse necessarily than you might have been in terms of win-loss record from making a deal for Donovan Mitchell, and you keep some of those future assets and younger picks.